Good morning and welcome to All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where on this very day, 100 years ago, 27 people gathered in the YWCA in downtown Tulsa and signed a charter to start All Souls Liberal Church. They thought the word Unitarian was too controversial for Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. And they started this church, which now has touched all of our lives. And so we have many special guests coming to help us celebrate this 100th birthday today. So with no further ado, I'd like to invite the first one, who is Barbara Wolfe, who for 60 of these 100 years has been like the heartbeat of this congregation as the wife of our minister emeritus, our late minister emeritus, the Reverend Dr. John Wolfe. Here's Barbara Wolfe.
This is a day that God has made. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. And let us count all of our many blessings. Let us be grateful for the capacity to see, feel, hear, and understand. Let us be grateful for the incredible gift of life. And let us be especially grateful for the ties of love that bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all of our days. Please join with me in saying the covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We are the McElroy family.
From the earliest days of this church, our grandfather, Fred Welsh, who was the first soloist for the church, and who often sang along with storied violinist Toscaberger Kramer on Sunday mornings, even before we had our first church building.
Our grandmother, Clara Welsh, helped establish the All Souls Sunday School for children. They raised our mother, Penny, at the church where she spent her entire life.
Our mother, along with our father, Art McElroy, raised the three of us at All Souls. And in the first 100 years, we have had 5 generations of our family involved in the life and leadership of this congregation.
So it was with great meaning and love that we light the chalice on the 100th birthday of the church.
On this Centennial Sunday, we light our chalice in honor of the mighty cloud of witnesses who have come before us. Though they are no longer visible to our outward eyes, their legacy surrounds us and blesses us still. May the light of freedom that they have kindled shine on forever.
Good morning, All Souls, and happy 100th birthday. I bring to you greetings on behalf of the Board of Trustees. It is an honor to serve as your president at All Souls at a time that we're going into one century, leaving one century and going into another. What an awesome time. Our history began in 1921 at a time of racial turmoil in the city of Tulsa with the Greenwood Massacre. And 100 years later, you've elected your first African-American president. During the last 100 years, this church transformed into a leader in the community for justice, civil, and voting rights. This church has played a significant role in the lives of many Tulsans, and I am sure we will continue to do that in our second century. Thank you for all you do to make this church possible. The staff and the many volunteers that help our church, that help keep this church going, and to keep our children educated, to keep our community fed, and to stand against injustices in the city of Tulsa. And a special thanks to the staff for keeping us connected through this terrible pandemic. We're excited about the future. A new vision for the church is being formulated for our first decade in our second century. We are in the process of making the necessary repairs to the church, and we are developing the plans to renovate, expand our current facility in the coming year thanks to the awesome members of this church that's working diligently to make this happen. There's a lot going on, and we have plenty to be grateful for. In our second century, please let's keep up the fight against racism and hate that impacts so many people. We have been a leader in this area, and let's make it even stronger in the years to come. May we continue to grow, love beyond belief. Hopefully, with the repairs that's going on to make our church safe, we'll be able to see each other soon. Again, happy birthday, and thank you.
Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving houses, no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. 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 Come yet again, come.
Good morning. Some of you may know the author Anne Lamott, and I have a story this morning for you from her book, Traveling Mercies, a true story about her son, Sam, when he was 8 years old, who was walking home from his friend's house, or trying to walk home from his friend's house in the afternoon, and lost his way, as sometimes happens, got turned around in the streets and just couldn't find his way home and started wandering further and further, actually, away from home. And thankfully saw a policeman and asked the policeman for help, who had him hop into his car, asked him if he remembered his address, started driving around the neighborhood, and Sam couldn't remember his address. But then suddenly, as they came around a corner, he saw the steeple of his church, and he said, oh, take me to the church. I'll know my way home from there, which is what the policeman did, dropped Sam off at the church, and Sam was able to walk home and find his way that way. I imagine the police officer following him behind, making sure he made it home. But the message this morning is clear that All Souls has been that place, that anchor, that North Star, that place that we orient our lives, people here in Tulsa and outside of Tulsa. For the last 100 years, people have oriented their lives around this church, this congregation, and the liberal religious tradition that it represents. And now, as we celebrate 100 years, our hope and our dream and our vision and our plan is that this congregation and this church will continue to be a guiding light and beacon in our lives, orienting our children and our grandchildren's and our great-grandchildren's lives for many, many, many more years to come.
Greetings, All Souls in Tulsa. I'm Susan Fredrick-Grey, president of your Unitarian Universalist Association, and on behalf of everyone at the UUA, as well as your sibling congregations across the association, I wish you a very happy anniversary as you celebrate 100 years of ministry. This past year in the U.S. has been, and across our globe, has been one of enormous tragedy and trauma, and also one of great reckoning. The need for both deeply pastoral and powerful prophetic moral leadership have been urgent, and I am so grateful for the ways that you all at All Souls have been showing up, how you have responded with decisions that have saved lives, that have centered community care, and that have responded to the demands of justice. I'm grateful for the ways that you use all across this country made a difference around our commitment to a multiracial, pluralistic democracy through UU the Vote, and we know that work for democracy continues. Thank you for the many ways that you and your congregation have tended to each other in these times, and the ways that you have witnessed to the life-saving, life-enriching message of Unitarian Universalism. Your ministry matters, and it is making such a difference. I send you all of my love and care and many, many blessings on this anniversary and all the days that follow.
Happy 100th anniversary to the congregation of All Souls Tulsa. I am Bill Hamilton-Holway, a grandson of two of the founding members of the church. My sisters, Marcia Schaefer and Shirley Adams, and I were christened by Reverend Bob Sonnen in the old church building on Boulder Avenue. And we grew up through Sunday school and the liberal religious youth groups. Our religious lives were formed at All Souls. Our grandparents, Hope and W.R. Holway, moved to Tulsa from the East Coast in 1918. We are sixth generation Unitarians. So it is no wonder when moving to Tulsa and discovering no Unitarian church, Hope and W.R. were delighted when on March 28th, 1921, they joined 25 others in founding All Souls. A liberal religious voice was needed in the community, and they were determined to found a Unitarian church. A favorite family story of this time was the night of the first meeting to consider organizing the church. WR stayed home with the two children, ages 3 and 2. Hope attended the meeting, pregnant with our father. So he was present at the meeting, but at the time, no one knew he would grow up to be a president of the future church. Reverend John Wolfe encouraged me to attend theological school, and in 1977, this congregation ordained me into the Unitarian Universalist ministry, where I served for 35 years until retiring 7 years ago. Thank you for your confidence in me. The church has been, is, and can be a place where, through generations, people are inspired to freely follow their conscience in religious belief and to shape their lives to shape a more just and equitable world. For so many families, All Souls celebrates life passages, births, and marriages. Memorial services for our parents and grandparents were held in the sanctuary. Their ashes are spread on the church grounds. All Souls is a sacred place. Our grandparents would be proud of your congregation's 100 years of vibrant presence in Tulsa, and to know their hope for an outspoken liberal religious voice continues to be heard across the city. Happy birthday, All Souls. Thanks for keeping the free faith alive in Tulsa.
Thank you, Bill. Reverend Bill Holway was a mentor to me, a friend, and a minister long before I knew anything about All Souls in Tulsa. Since that time, since coming here, I became the minister to his parents, Bill and Polly Holway, who became very important to me and whose memorial services I had the honor to officiate here in this congregation. On a day like this, when we remember those who've come before us and whose shoulders we stand upon, we've put together a video retrospective. I want to thank Bonita James for that. And I'd like you to watch it just for a few moments and look, and maybe you'll see yourself, maybe you'll see some people you love.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Well, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. You know, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Well, you know, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Well, you know, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. One more time, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. Well, I'm telling you, we who believe in freedom cannot Yeah. All right now. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Everyone can see we're together as we walk on by, and we fly just like birds of a feather. I won't tell no lie. All of the people around us, they say, how can we be that close? Just let me stick on the record. We're giving love in a family door. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I got all my family. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I got all my family with me, yeah. Living life is fun and we've just begun to get our share of the world's delight. High hopes we have for the future and our goals inside. No, we don't get depressed. Here's what we call our family truth. Hey, have faith in and the things you do. We won't go wrong. Oh no, this is our family truth. Yeah. Oh yes, we are. I got all my family with me. Yeah. Oh yes, we are. Hey, hey, hey. We are family. Yeah. I got all my family with me. Hey, 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 hey. Woo, yeah. Let me hear, let me hear. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. Get up, everybody. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
We are family, and we have been family for 100 years. A family a family that has dealt with many sorrows and many joys, has celebrated together, mourned together, and lived together that wonderful principle of love beyond belief. Today is a day of celebration. Today is a day where we look and out into the world and see the sun shining, the spring is here, and we are here together. Some of you have posted a few concerns, and so I'd like to lift up those concerns now and ask that we all hold these members of our community, these members of our family in our hearts, and sending out our energy of healing to them. Marcia and Mark Westerman, in particular, asked us to say some prayers and light a candle for their 3-year-old granddaughter who was just diagnosed with some heart issues. May the doctors find a solution and heal her, and may she have a very long and healthy life. And Andrea Bain has asked us to light a candle for her daughter, Alyssa, who has been having some health issues this week. And of course, I think of all of the people that are still battling the after effects of COVID, including dealing with their grief of loss of family, loss of friends, loss of jobs, careers, dreams, homes. We hold all of them in our hearts. I also like to light a candle for all of the health workers that continue to serve us so valiantly. And for our leadership, local, state, and federal. May they have insight. For all of us, really. Let us renew our trust in democracy, our trust in each other. We are not, as a country, we are not blue and red. We are not liberal and conservative. We are family. We are family. Let us remember that. We may have different beliefs, but fundamentally, we are one. And now I'd like to invite our wonderful Bishop Carlton Pearson to offer us prayers.
Thank you, Reverend. Good morning to everybody. 100 years of loving, caring, praying, communing with each other. Community is common unity. Communion is common union. 100 years, pretty awesome. And we're still going strong with the best yet to come. We reach out by faith and in love to all hurting people who have requested and those that we don't even know about your request. Thank you, God, that you do with all things well, that in your wisdom and intelligence, there is a knowing in the earth that restores our confidence and trust in the ethereal. Thank you for divinity. Thank you for community. Thank you for hope. Thank you for tenacity and resilience, for the hurting hearts and homes and broken spirits, those who are battling illnesses and trauma and drama in their families or on their jobs or in their consciousness. We reach forth with prayer and faith and peace for the restorative powers of faith and trust. We expect intervention. Thank you that through all the disruptions, there's an ultimate peace that passes all understanding, and joy that is unspeakable and full of glory, and increasing clarity, verity, and certainty that all is ultimately good and God. We decree and declare this in the sacred name of all that is good and God. And so it is. Amen.
This week, I had the great pleasure of having a conversation with our oldest member. Roena Stander is 101. She's sharp as can be, funny, and knowledgeable about our history. Her family came to All Souls in 1924, 3 years after the signing of the charter. We didn't have a building. I'm gonna share about 7 minutes of clips of that interview, which I think you will find incredibly endearing. I think you'll fall in love with Roena as much as I did, and learn a little bit about our history. So here's Roena Stander. So you were born in 1920. You're 100 years old.
Yeah,
and of course,
I'm 101.
Okay, so you're 101. And of course, All Souls is turning 100 in March. And so we wanted to talk to you because you came to All Souls, your family came in 1924. Well, what's your first memory of All Souls?
I can remember Sunday school and, as Majestic Theater, a movie house. And, at that time they had carpeting. And I can remember running down the aisles on the carpeting and in the...
As a little girl, you would be running up and down the aisles in the movie theater. When you were meeting at the Majestic Theater, did they have Sunday school for the children?
Yes.
Was it up in the balcony?
Yes. As I recall, it was Floretta Reed that taught our Sunday school class.
Is that right? Do you remember Clara Welsh?
Oh, Penny's
Penny's mother.
Yes.
What do you remember about her?
Well, mostly being Patty Welch's mother. I think Patty was a bit younger than me.
What do you remember about Penny? What was Penny like?
Oh, she was fun. We'd come back to Tulsa, and the folks would drive to Stillwater. And I remember Penny came with us several times. And I remember Fred Welch, her Patty's father, sang in the church, particularly in the Majestic Theater. I do remember that in the church service.
You say again, you remember Fred Welsh sang in the church services at the Majestic Theater?
Tosca played the violin and Fred Welch sang.
Tell us about Bob Sonnen and his family.
Oh, when Bob Sonnen came, Mother was president of the Women's Alliance. So, of course, she was on the church board. And, of course, there was another man. And at that time, when we were getting new ministers, they came, men would come to Tulsa and would give a church service. And we would have 2 or 3 would come. And Bob Sonnen was one, and there was another one.
Do you remember anything about Bob Sonnen? Anything he did for you or impression?
He was always one of my favorites. I always liked him real well, and I hated to see him go.
Yeah. What did you like about him?
Oh, he was always very outgoing, and he was easy to be around. I don't know what it was. I just always liked him.
Do you remember his children?
I remember him he had a little girl and he had twins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His wife had the twins while they were at the church.
Right. Olive.
Yeah. And in fact, when she was pregnant and she was going to visit somebody in the hospital, and she couldn't drive anymore, so she called a taxi, and the taxi took off. Lady split. And she said she wanted to go to the hospital. So the taxi went out and she said, "Oh, you can slow down. It's not for me."
Any other stories about Bob Sonnen that you remember?
At that time, there was a little theater, and once a month, they put on plays, and Bob would frequently be in those plays.
Oh, nice. So he had quite a personality,
yes,
it sounds like.
He had a very nice personality.
Oh, great. Great.
And, when I was a child, the minister, you don't hear much about him anymore, Von Stille.
Yes.
And he went from here to Oklahoma City. They used to have church dinners, and the women in the church at that time cooked the dinner. And us young people would, when I got older, would serve it. And you remember the candlelight service at Christmas time. I can remember that when that first started, there was about 10 of us kids that was in, they still have a procession with the kids running around with the candle, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
And, I was in one of the early ones of those. Well, then I got older, that candlelight service got more popular and more popular and more popular, and they had 2 services. So in between the services, they would serve wassail. And I know one time there was another lady, and we were making, the wassail consisted of instant tea. What's the orange drink, the powder?
Oh, like Tang or something?
Tang. And some spices.
Uh-huh.
Well, we'd mix it all together, then taste it. Does it taste okay? Well, it needs more of this or that. We put that in. Well, and then, after, between the services, we would serve it, but people would drink it. Oh, this is so good. Do you have the recipe for this? We made it, my guess, my gosh, there was no recipe other than instant tea, Tang, sugar, and spices. If somebody asked what church I went to, I'd say Unitarian. They would look at me like, what's that? 9/10 of them didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And 9/10 of them anymore don't know what it is.
Still, right, it's the same, right? What do you remember about the music in the church?
Oh, well, I remember Tosca Berger. She was famous in Tulsa citywide, but I think she was a charter member of the church, wasn't she?
I think so.
And and it was the church at 14th and Boulder was a favorite place for music teachers that taught piano to have their recitals.
Uh-huh.
And the music teachers had to really get their names in early to get their favorite dates. And as you probably well know, the church at 14th Boulder did not have an organ. It had a Steinway piano. And of course, that's what the music teachers liked, was the Steinway. And of course, the church was on the small side. And so it was a favorite place to have church recitals.
Okay, I've heard that before. It's the 100th birthday of All Souls. What do you wish for the future of All Souls? Can you tell us something that you hope for us?
That it continues just like it has always continued.
Great.
And being successful as it always has been.
Why do you think it's important for Tulsa to have All Souls?
Because I think the church, of course, we don't have a creed or anything. We let everybody live their life and they want us to live our life.
Hey, this is great. Thank you so much for your time. It means so much to just hear a little bit of this history live and in person from someone who lived it. 101 years old. We should all be so lucky to have that kind of energy and spunk at 101. As you can see, Roena is full of life, and it makes us think 100 years. It's not so old. The church is 100, and we are full of life and humor and great stories and great memories as well. When I think of the theme of today's service, for those who believe in freedom cannot rest. The best encapsulation of this as it relates to our congregation comes from the late Reverend Dr. John Wolfe, who said from this pulpit in 2012 in his maybe his last message or one of his last messages to this church, he said, "Many of us here, it turns out, have had enough happen to us in our lives that we've had to revise our opinions about a lot of things that we believed in, or that we were told that we were supposed to believe in." I know plenty of you who have experienced enough to have caused you to ask some very basic questions about the assumptions of the popular faith that you once held as absolute. I believe this place exists because we created it. It was no accident. It never would have happened without us and those friends and older companions who preceded us, who laid the foundation for what we have built and are building. Not just anyone would have done it. Not just anybody would have needed to do it. Not just anybody would have wanted to do it. For whatever reason, and we have some reasons, there are some of us who have at the very least been pushed out of the churches that we were in for whatever reason. And so we bond together here to see if we can celebrate here a faith for the free. I have to tell you that I think there is more than a little genius here. What we do here and what we're about here is extraordinary. Not necessarily unique, but it is extraordinary given the religious climate of our time. So here's the moral of the tale. This church is not just going to happen. It did not come out of nowhere, nor is it going to continue by accident, by random selection. We have to put our minds to it and our intention. People say to me, "What do you do about the Ayatollahs of the world whose madness reaches into our bookstores? What do we do about the right to life and the white supremacist zealots who threaten our hospitals and our highways and our youth? What can we do about the political Philistines and their disciples who want to invade our schools and our play yards with their pieties?" Many things. We take sides, we start arguments, we stay awake. But first and foremost, we make a church like this one, as strong as we can make it. And we say to ourselves, what if this church were even stronger, even larger? And what if there were more churches like it? What difference would that make? I'll tell you, fanaticism works where there's no one to oppose it. Ignorance triumphs where there's too few to stand together to counter it. Prejudice and hate, baptized by a divine name, is abetted and even sanctioned by a society where there's no institution strong enough to call it out by its proper name. Dr. Wolfe reminded us that these things, ignorance and prejudice and zealotry and fanaticism, grow when there's no institutions and no people who are strong enough and clear enough and free enough to speak out against it. And that's what this congregation has stood for a century now, and will, if it's up to us, will continue for another century and on into eternity. It was the famous Unitarian minister of the 19th century, Reverend Theodore Parker, who wrote in one of his most famous addresses, and he had many famous addresses. He was quoted by Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address with the words, "We have created a government for the people, by the people, of the people." Those were his words from one of his sermons, quoted by Martin Luther King and others for his words about the idea that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And in his sermon called "The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity," he spoke at the end about the importance of the freedom of the pulpit. He delivered this address at an ordination. And so he wanted to make sure that the community understood how absolutely vitally important it was for the pulpit in a church to be a place of freedom and a free voice in the community. He wrote, "You could," I paraphrase a little bit just to bring the language up to our times, "you could prevent the freedom of speech in this pulpit if you wanted to. You could hire ministers to be your servants, to preach what you want to hear, to ignore your vices and flatter your follies, to prophesy only comforting things, and say it is peace when there is no peace. Yet in so doing, you weaken yourselves. And then you will have ministers who think one thing in the closet and preach another in this pulpit. Over that minister's study and over that church's pulpit might be written in bold letters, emptiness. On that minister's robes and on their foreheads and right hands, the words deceit, deceit. All Souls carries on a courageous American tradition of religious freedom. And it's as important in our times as it's been in any times that have come before us. In this era of fake news, of QAnon conspiracy theorists moving towards insurrection in the Capitol, in the wheels of power at the Capitol, a new rise of white supremacy, high-level moves to limit women's reproductive rights, the uptick of authoritarianism all over the world, threats to democracy, the threat of climate change, and of course, the many ways that technology today and its pace threatens to dehumanize us. A free church, a free pulpit where the ministers are given the freedom to speak their minds from the depths and the fire of their own conscience and experience, and the people in the pews have that same freedom to accept or not accept what the minister has to say, is an important tradition in our democracy and in our community. The need for religious freedom has never been any more important than it is right now. As Barbara Prose said in her story earlier in this service, we all get lost sometimes in our lives. I know I've been there, and I'm looking at some of you, and I know you've been there too, because I've been with you. And when we get lost, when we're lost emotionally, when we're lost because loved ones die, when we're lost because our career ends for one reason or another, when we get lost in life, when our democracy gets lost about what it stands for and what we value, when our religion gets lost because we're not quite sure whether what we believe or what others believe or what we're being told to believe are really leading us to love, we can come to this place. We can come back home to our congregation, to our community, and to the values that we lift up and hold most dear, we can find this church, and this church will help us find our way home for another 100 years at least, and on until eternity. Thank you for helping us keep the light of freedom alive, because we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Amen. On this special occasion for us, where 100 years ago, a group who preceded us gathered in the YWCA of downtown to start this congregation. They met there for a long time before we had a building of our own. And so we are going to take a collection for the YWCA here in Tulsa. It's an organization that's mission is to end racism and empower women. It couldn't be more aligned with our own values here at All Souls. So I hope you'll give generously. I know a number of you have reached out about donating some of the stimulus money that has been coming in to the church, and we really appreciate that as a gift for our 100th birthday, a little bit of extra funds. We had to cut back our budget a lot this year because of the COVID and the pandemic and all the changes. So we appreciate your gifts to the church as well. But today's offering will go to the YWCA of Tulsa. And as you get ready, as you figure out how you want to give online or however, writing a check and mailing it in, I just want to say, next Sunday is Easter Sunday. It's the Sunday that the church is the most full every year. And of course, this year, once again, we're going to have our Easter services online. We do have a special gift if you're able to come by the church this week. We have some times, including today, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I'll be out there for taking a shift, and others from our staff to give a special gift. It's an Easter egg. It's a plastic Easter egg, and inside, you open it up, and you flip over one end, and it's all set up for you, the pieces inside, to be a traveling flaming chalice. It even has a tea light, a battery-operated tea light, and you can turn this egg into a flaming chalice that you can take anywhere and everywhere and carry the light of this tradition that's so important to all of us with you. So I hope you'll come by and pick up your Easter gift and join us next Sunday for 2 services to celebrate Easter, and our humanist service, of course, to celebrate spring and renewal. Let us now receive this morning's offering. Oh, yeah. We have a very special guest to extinguish our chalice. It is, you saw the pictures of the sewn-in children in one of the videos we saw today, and one of them has grown up a little bit. Bobbie Bollinger is her name now, but Bob Sonen's daughter is going to extinguish our chalice, and then I have a few closing words.
During Bob Sonen's tenure with All Souls from 1944 until 1958, he concluded each of his services with the same benediction, which we will use as our own this morning, some 65 years later. At the conclusion of the service, with Beulah McConnell's organ music filling the sanctuary, he walked from the front of the church down the center aisle, black robes flowing, turned and said to the congregation these words, "And now may the blessings of the just and the merciful, your own sense of righteousness, and the eternal glory of God be your strength and your peace now and in the days to come. Amen."
Thank you, Bobbie. It's great to see you and your siblings with us today. And also, I see Fred Welsh, the namesake and the son of Fred and Claire Welsh, and his wife Jan are with us. I can see you on the Zoom screen. I see Barbara Wolfe and others. It's so great to have the Hallways and others with us today for this very special occasion. As we go forth and take our first steps into the 2nd century of this church, may your eyes see beauty, may your lips speak truth, may your heart know love, and may your hands do the good works of this world all the days of your life. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.